Hey everyone, welcome to the Rise and Above podcast, a platform for you to share your story. Oftentimes, we all have something that happens to us in life and we have no way of sharing. Many people want an outlet, whether it's writing a book or going on a massive networking platform or starting an inspirational social media account. With the Rise and Above platform, anyone with an inspiring, motivating, or interesting story can come on and share. It could be anything from the struggles of starting a business, the struggles of overcoming homelessness or mental illness. I've interviewed victims of rape, sexual assault, and abuse. There is no subject that is off limits. This platform offers a safe and fun way for you to share your story through a one-on-one experience. If you would like to share your story, the best way to reach out would be through social media. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook or through email. All the links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Rise and Above podcast. I'm David Hess, and today I have an old friend with me. Her name's Alicia Hicks. She is a victim of sexual assault, and so her story may be triggering to some. And if you feel that you might be triggered by her story, just please turn this off. However, she is a local business owner. She owns Beauty and Beast Hair Salon on the north side of Lansing. So I guess with that, would you mind introducing yourself? Are you from the Lansing area? Were you born and raised here? Can you tell me a little bit about your past and whatnot?
Yeah, so I was raised here in Lansing. I went away for a little bit to Pensacola with my brother at one point, and went to North Dakota with my ex-husband, lived there for 5 years, and then came back to Lansing. So now I'm back here. I was homeschooled in the homeschool community.
That's where I met you.
Yes.
A long time ago.
Right? It's crazy. I have 4 kids. They're 7, 6, 4, and 3. So they keep me really busy.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Now, how long have you owned this hair salon?
So I opened it up January 2019, so just a little bit over 2 years. And it's also a jujitsu gym. So it's teach women self-defense there as well. And jujitsu.
You teach it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool to you kind of have 2 businesses in one.
Yeah, that's where the Beauty and Beast part comes from. Beauty for hair, Beast for the jujitsu.
I like that. Now, let's talk a little bit about your past. You have a story that you wanted to share. That you feel might be helpful to some.
Yeah, so I was kind of trying to figure out exactly where to start, and it's actually pretty difficult to figure out exactly the right point to start. And I think for most women, it might be best if I start at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I was kind of debating whether or not to do this because it's not going to make my family too happy. But if it helps some women out there feel not so alone, I think I'm good to share it from the beginning. So.
Well, I mean, I doubt you're on here to try to make people look bad.
Right.
And it's part of your story. And obviously, you can share as much or as little as you want. Whatever you're comfortable with. So.
Yeah, so starting at the very beginning, it's one thing that a lot of women don't realize is that, especially when there is childhood trauma, it makes it a lot more difficult to understand things even as you're getting older. And so I think it's important to I don't know. I'll just go ahead and start. So, the first incident was with my oldest brother, and it was starting when I was really young. But the main time I remember was when I was around 5 years old. It stopped when I was about 6 or 7 when he finally moved out of the house. So he molested me growing up, and I think from there, a lot of women will be able to relate to this, is that when it starts at such a young age, it's so difficult to figure out what's normal and what's not when it comes to relationships in the future. So there was the whole thing with my brother growing up. I never told anybody about it until I was like in my 20s.
Wow.
My parents did know about it, but not a
Happened to him? Did when they found out?
no. I mean, they made him like say you sorry, but that was it.
I mean, that would be so rough trying to figure out what to do because I mean that's you're both their children.
Yeah. So he was 11 years older than me as well. So he was like 16, 17. So like obviously more than knew better. But I think it started around with other people when he was even younger, like 10, 11. And it just didn't stop. But I think one of the biggest things for me that like is difficult to deal with is like my parents not doing anything about it. Like me as a parent, I mean, I think that I might be being a little bit biased, but I can't imagine like me as a parent or like not understanding why my dad didn't like kick him out. He's like 16, like goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that was really hard to kind of come to terms with that I've been dealing with as an adult as well. So from there, dealing with things as a young teenager was really difficult. So the next thing that happened was when I was 13. There was a neighbor. He was 21 years old, and he took advantage of me sexually on a very regular basis. And I know that some people that haven't been through trauma don't really understand like how someone could take advantage of you more than once, but I mean I was 13, 21.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that, and then
was it like a friendship?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys would be hanging out and then things would just kind of happen.
Yes. Yep. And then in amongst a lot of those other in that time period, there was a bunch of like littler things that would happen with people I was friends with, or the biggest thing is that because it was so normal as a little kid, I didn't know I could say no, and even when I did, I didn't know how to like assert myself, and main reason I like always want to like talk about all of this is because it's actually a lot more common than a lot of women know, is that something will happen when they're an adult and they don't really realize that it actually stemmed back to something that could have happened when they were a kid. So the most recent thing that happened to me is when I was 23. I was at a friend's party, and this was a person that I also knew since I was young. They were grew up with me. I don't think you ever met them. But I was at a friend's party, and I was drugged and raped. And from there, my life completely fell apart. At the time, I was married. My husband was overseas deployed, and I just completely fell apart emotionally. One of the harder ones to pick myself up from, because it just didn't make sense. A lot of things from I've not openly talked about this like this except for with the therapist, so it feels weird.
You're okay. You're okay.
But yeah, I think the main thing is that I really want to get out to people and like other women is that it's okay to open up about people that have sexual trauma in their life. It's more than likely at least 3 or 4 times. Once it's happened once, it's typically a reoccurring thing, and lots of women don't like to talk about it because it makes them feel bad, because they're always blaming themselves, and they're always wondering, being like, oh, I got myself into a bad situation so many times, it's obviously my fault, and it's not. That's the main message that I want to get out to people, and I can talk any more details that you want.
Well, I mean, and there's a lot of shame that's attached to that. I mean, because a lot of women don't feel comfortable. I mean, a lot of people don't. Like, I was sexually molested when I was a kid as well by an uncle, and I haven't talked about it. I haven't talked about it on this podcast.
Yeah.
You know, there's some shame attached to that, and it's not a comfortable thing to talk about. But
no, not at all. definitely think it's important because there's a lot of people out there that feel alone and feel shamed, and they deal with it in their own head. And when you're dealing with something in your own head, it's so much more difficult to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And
So when this happened to you, you said it put you into an emotional deep depression, I would assume. How did you handle that, and what kind of things were you experiencing during that time emotionally, and what was your thought process? What and what did you do to change
yes.
to make a change?
So, the first 6 months after that assault, I was still very, very, very triggering to even like just think about the 6 months that happened after that. But I'd say the main thing I was feeling was 100% that it was my fault. I was more or less numb, and I very quickly fell into a very deep state of depression, and a bunch of other things happened within that time period as well, where my husband was deployed and I didn't tell anybody about what happened. And
did he know about it?
He did not until about 2 or 3 weeks after.
Wow.
So I ended up confiding in another man that I met. He was supposed to just be a friend, and through me opening up about that with him, I more or less ended up cheating on my husband with that guy, which is not anything I'm proud of. I know that I've gotten forgiveness from my now ex-husband about it, and like I've gotten God's forgiveness, and I'm moving forward from it. Thankful for God's grace. But that was a whole nother thing that went along with the depression, is because even after I ended that with that guy, there was a lot of feelings of just feeling like I didn't deserve to be loved. And so even though my husband understood where I was at when that happened with the other guy, he forgave me, but I still didn't feel like I even deserved love at that point. And so I pushed him away pretty hard. And he tried to stick around a little bit. He did try, but eventually I was able to push him away pretty dang good. And so now we are divorced. So in that time period, I was dealing with things with trying to push my ex-husband away, trying to get rid of / cling to the guy who I had first told about what happened, and a lot of emotional stuff having to do with that. And I would go to sleep at night, and I would have nightmares and be reliving everything that had happened. And I had gotten to the point where I wasn't sleeping at all. So along with depression, sleep deprivation, I think it was around, it was the middle of October, and I was just done. I hadn't slept. It was like that was the biggest thing. I feel like if I could have gotten some sleep, I would have been able to deal with it a little bit more, but I couldn't sleep. And so I decided that night that I was going to end my life. And I had 3 kids at that point, and I just found out I was pregnant with our 4th. I was a little ways along at that point, but I just found out I was pregnant with our youngest, and I just didn't want to live anymore. So I got myself a babysitter for that night, and put the kids to sleep. And I think it was probably around like 2 a.m. I think it was my little sister. My little sister was the one who came over to watch them. I don't even remember the excuse I made to my sister or where I was going.
I'm sure that was the last thing on your mind. Like, what am I going to tell her that's
right?
that she's going to believe?
Right. So she came over. She watched the kids, and around 2 a.m. I left. I had the kids asleep, and kissed them goodnight, what I thought was going to be for the last time. And I thought that me not being in their life was going to be better, because I was an emotional disaster, and So I drove away and made a plan of how I was going to end my life. And I was just riding in the car, crying, like to the point where like I couldn't even see street signs. It was extremely unsafe in general, just driving like that in that state. And I honestly, I don't know if you believe in God, but I literally felt God's presence and like almost an audible voice that said to me, the sun will rise in the morning. Tomorrow's another day. Don't let this one evening define your life. And then I was driving down Saginaw, so I was approximately like 3 to 4 minutes from Sparrow Hospital.
Okay.
So I drove myself to Sparrow, parked my car right in the emergency parking lot, and took myself into Sparrow and admitted myself to the mental hospital.
That's intense.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what that feeling would be like knowing that this is it. I'm kissing my kids goodnight, and this is the last time.
It's still like anytime I think about it, it just makes me want to cry because like now that I've been through it, I'm like, what in the world was that? Like, I just can't, like, the feeling of saying goodbye to my kids and thinking that it was the right thing to do is just terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
That that I could get to that state, and knowing that other people can get to that state is scary.
Yeah. Now you checked yourself into Sparrow. What happened then?
So from there, talked to a couple different counselors. And then I ended up staying, I believe it was 4 nights in St. Lawrence Hospital over there. And then got scheduled with a therapist before I could get out of there. And ever since then, I was in counseling. Still am doing counseling. But after I left, the next day was my very first appointment with the therapist, and it was soon after that I was introduced to jujitsu. And in combination with obviously like that drive and everything that I felt on that drive before I admitted myself to the hospital, that and jujitsu is honestly what helped me get through. Get through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I found jujitsu and started training in jujitsu, and that along with the counseling and therapy is what helped me get through it that time.
Wow, that's a crazy, crazy story. Now, you do Gracie Jiu-Jitsu,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How did you find that?
So at the time, there was a school over on the west side of Lansing called Lansing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And my instructor, Max Kuhn, he taught Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So that's how I got introduced to Jiu-Jitsu, and he did Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Then from there, I started training more and everything, and then became obsessed with the Gracies. I just love their like style of Jiu-Jitsu because there's a lot of different styles of Jiu-Jitsu. But the thing I like about like the Gracies is that it's street Jiu-Jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of other Jiu-Jitsu styles is competition or sports, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
But the Gracies is street Jiu-Jitsu, and it's more life applicable, and it helps you work through trauma.
So, I would imagine that doing Jiu-Jitsu and trying to overcome this trauma probably had a significant effect on your life.
Oh, yeah.
Where you probably take your aggression, your anger out on the mats. I mean,
In a way, yeah.
Kind of like running does for a lot of people, or working out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd say the main thing that Jiu-Jitsu has helped me with the trauma is that not any time, but at the beginning, every single time I would train or roll or spar, is it made me feel triggered. But I was able to feel that triggered feeling and know I was in control still. And it taught me how to feel the feeling of being triggered and to work through it. And that I was doing something good while feeling triggered. So I would know every time I was going to go train, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be triggered. And this is practice for when I feel it other times when I'm not doing jiu-jitsu.
Probably allows you to have more control over your emotions and everything else as well.
Yes, 100%. I mean, still.
Sorry.
Hi, kitty.
Is that Ella?
It's so cute.
She'll probably jump up on the table and walk around.
Nice. Like still to this day, just last week I went and trained, and like the second I walked into the gym, I was immediately like, I was like, oh, it's another time I'm gonna be super triggered. But because of jujitsu, I'm able to be like, oh, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. Like I'm gonna feel triggered, and I'm able to work through it, and that means I'm gonna come out stronger, not only in like my techniques for jujitsu, but in my process of working through the trauma.
Now, you've been doing jiu-jitsu for how long? 3-4 years?
3.5 years, yeah.
How do you feel now going into a jiu-jitsu class compared to your first week, first day?
Yeah. The first time I went in, I had no idea what to expect at all. All I knew is that one of my friends suggested to me, they're like, hey, you should take some type of like a martial arts or something to get your anger out. Little did I know that, and all I did was Google like martial arts in Lansing, and then I found jiu-jitsu, which I'm so thankful because there's so many different styles of martial arts, and the one that was most effective for what I needed was jiu-jitsu, and it just happened upon it. But the first time going in there, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I was extremely nervous.
What are you doing, Oliver? This cat does not like me, and I don't know why he's up here.
Oh, I'm a cat person, so he probably senses it. So the first time I went in, definitely didn't know what I was getting myself into. Was extremely nervous. I wouldn't say I was I don't think I was even to the point where I could acknowledge being triggered yet.
Mm-hmm.
I just, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I was very triggered and had high anxiety. I wasn't to the point of understanding that yet. But compared to now, like now when I am teaching a class and I'm able to, I get triggered to a point when I'm teaching, but it's almost like an empowered feeling as well. So like I know, like I'll be teaching women, be like, all right, when we're practicing this technique, there's one that's called managing the distance between an aggressive opponent. And one of the things that I teach my women to say is when they're within 2 arms lengths away from you, you say, stop, you're making me uncomfortable, and you put your arms up. And me still teaching that is therapeutic for me. It's empowering, but it's also triggering. So it's really, it's kind of difficult to explain what I feel now.
Right.
But it's definitely a combination of a lot of things.
Now, you said you opened up your salon in 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was obviously after all of this.
Right. That was 2017 when the assault happened.
So do you think that being at the lowest point in your life, to the point where you decided that you were going to take your own life, kind of after you came out of that mental state of being, it kind of pushed you into just wanting to be as successful as possible?
Yeah.
And
100%.
as far as like business-wise and...
Yeah. So I was in cosmetology school at the time when the assault happened when I was 23, and then I happened upon jiu-jitsu, and I was about to graduate cosmetology school, and I became obsessed with jiu-jitsu. I was talking to all of my cosmetology classmates about it, trying to get them to come to class. I'm like, you guys don't understand. This is amazing. I probably sounded like I was in a cult, the Gracie cult. It's a thing. But I became obsessed with it, and then when I was about to graduate, I was talking to my instructor, and I was like, I love jiu-jitsu, but I'm like, I just spent like 2 years in cosmetology school, and I made it through, so I can't not do hair, but I also want to like empower other women. I want to give other women what I have, like the life I got back because of jiu-jitsu, and I want to offer that to other women. I just wish I could do both. And my instructor was like, then do both. And I'm like, oh,
I can do both.
That's a good point. So when I was going through everything between 2017, when I was working on coming out of everything and went to the mental hospital, and that between that point and when I decided to open the business, it was very much I honestly hope that my attacker sees this podcast somehow, because I want him to know that like
he motivated you, pushed you.
He motivated me, pushed me. He's helped in. I mean, I'm actually, you know what? I don't even want to give him that credit, because it wasn't him. It was 100% me. But I want him to know that it didn't end me, and that he's a piece of, you know what? I don't know if we're allowed to swear on here.
You can say whatever you want to say. He's a piece of shit.
Yes, that. I mean, I could use some more explicit words than that to describe him, but
kind of going back to that, was he a friend? Was he somebody that you trusted?
I wouldn't necessarily say trusted per se, because honestly, he grew up like a block away from where I grew up, and we were friends, and then he moved away with his mom probably when I was like 16, and then I think we'd seen each other a couple times here and there, but I mean, I moved away to North Dakota when I was 19, and then I moved back when I started cosmetology school. So I had only seen him probably like 3 times since I'd been back.
Wow.
So I wouldn't necessarily say trusted per se, but yeah.
So did he explain to you why he did it? Did he didn't talk to you at all about it?
No. So
did he get into any trouble?
That's a whole nother story. No. I did end up filing a police report eventually. One of my very good friends made me do it. And that's another thing that comes back to when you're dealing with trauma, and because I hadn't worked through it emotionally yet, even when I filed the police report, I lied about things on it that made it, like, because I was like, oh, like I was here at this point, and that makes me like, that's something I blamed myself for, so I didn't want to admit it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I mean, I filed the police report, and he did end up like getting questioned by detectives and everything, and basically it was a he said she said thing. Eventually, I've been meaning to do this for a while, but I need to go revise my statement just for my own reasons, I guess you'd say, to be like, oh yeah, like, because nothing, I didn't necessarily lie about anything in my statement. There's things that
you left out.
Yeah, there's things that I left out because I thought, I was like, oh, that's my fault, because, oh, I took the drink from him, that's my fault. So what was the question?
My question was, did he get into any legal trouble?
So yeah, he didn't.
Did he talk to you about anything?
No. So, well, there was a little bit of conversation back and forth via Facebook, of him like calling me a psychopath, and
he didn't admit to anything.
No, he told the police and he told me that it was consensual, and he actually had a girlfriend. There's just so many crazy things that happened in that scenario. It's just like, it's just stupid, because his girlfriend came by as I was unconscious still, and she says that in her statement to the police was that I was completely coherent and awake, and I have these small visions of like where I would be able to like wake up and see, and like I remember this one time where she was like checking my pulse, and then they were both trying to feed me, and I believe that he had told her maybe that like I drank too much or something. But no, she like 100% saw me unconscious and straight up lied in the police report that she saw me completely coherent. So I actually couldn't, like, I ended up stumbling my way out of his house, and literally stumbling, like hitting on the walls, and I only had half of a drink, so it's not like I was intoxicated by any means. And stumbling out of the house, and I made it about a block and a half away, and I called the police because I was like, I'm not a safe driver right now. I know I can't drive, and at that point I didn't understand 100% why I was the way I was. I didn't know
that you were drugged.
Right. I just didn't understand. They were smoking marijuana. I had never really been around marijuana before, so like there was the thought in my head. I was like, oh, maybe I got a contact high, and I'm like really, really freaking high right now. Little did I know that's not how it works. So I like told the police that, it's just so stupid looking back at it, but it's also something I think I need to talk about, because for other women, you're gonna feel like there's things that you're women lie about the exactly what happened. So I told the police that I was like, oh yeah, I smoked like 4 joints and I had
jeez.
like 6 drinks, and so I'm not able to drive. So they ended up taking me to the hospital, and then I ended up having my little while I was sitting in the waiting room, my little sister just came and picked me up and I just bolted. But looking back at it, if I would have gone in,
They would have tested your
they
blood.
would have tested everything and
Mhm.
found the roofies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still another thing that's extremely maddening to me. Is I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have called my little sister and had her come pick me up. But
So were you? I don't want to get like too personal or anything.
oh, get as personal as you would like.
But do you recall it happening? Him forcing his way upon you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. So there's like.
So
there's,
in the moment, you knew what was happening, but you couldn't. You're so incoherent.
Right.
You couldn't really do anything about it.
So my the only way I can fully explain it is it's like I would be like I remember like falling back onto the bed just feeling like extremely tired. I was like, oh my gosh, why am I so tired? And I remember just falling back, and then like only other way I can explain after that is it was like I'd like come to and like see what was going on, and then like just go back to sleep, and then I would like want to move my body, but my body wouldn't move, which is obviously still a very terrifying thing when it comes into jujitsu. And like if someone has me pinned in a position and I can't move, it 100% sends me back to where like I want to move and I'm trying to move, but I can't. So it was a lot. In reality, it was about it lasted about 2 hours. Ish. And so there's a lot of like the only thing I can call is like snippets where I would like wake up and like kind of be a little bit coherent and then go back unconscious. And times where I remember one time that I was actually crying for my husband. I said I just want Will, and then I remember, and then I just passed back out. So yeah, so there was definitely things that I remembered from it, and I did not go into that much detail in my police report. But I think I've like gotten to the point where I'm like, all right, I need to go revise that and give every freaking detail. I don't think anything will come of it from me changing my statement, but
yeah, because they probably weren't able to get much evidence. I mean, because that's a huge problem with people who have been raped or whatever. Women feel ashamed of it,
yeah.
so they don't go right away and talk to the police or go to the hospital. Then they can't get the evidence that they need.
Yeah,
and then it's too late.
And there's also other things that's unfortunate about just that system in general. Honestly, even if they do go and get a sane kit at the hospital, I know many women who actually have been strong enough to go in immediately and get the sane kit done. And even at that point, there's a lot of things just messed up with how that system goes. And there's just so many things that's frustrating about things that need to be fixed for women that are survivors. And one thing that like I've been really, really wanting to reiterate to women is that like it's so hard to like actually help them understand in the moment, but like just be honest about everything. Because one thing is like it doesn't matter if you took the drink. It doesn't matter if you were there when you maybe think you shouldn't have been. Like one thing I blame myself for, I'm like, oh, I was at a friend's party at the time, like everybody in my circle didn't believe drinking was right. So I was like, oh, I was there and there was alcohol and I took a drink and I was with other guys when I married. I mean, there was other girls there too, but I was like, oh, I was with other guys when I was married. It's my fault. So I felt like there was things that I had to lie about.
Was there other people there when this was happening?
Were his right before I went unconscious the first time, his friend was there.
Nobody tried stopping it?
No. He just like saw what was going on and then just walked out.
Wow. His friends are losers.
Well, yeah. That's the type of people that, yeah. But yeah, one of the main things is that it's hard to iterate to women is like just don't lie, because even as guilty as you feel and as shameful as you feel in the moment, you're going to regret it years from now. Like, I know I do. I hard regret it because this guy also, I'd found out, actually ended up assaulting his girlfriend. And I'm like, man, if I would have actually filed an actual, completely true statement of what happened, there's no way they wouldn't have arrested him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, at least I believe, that's what I believe in my head. And then especially with what happened with his girlfriend, like he had to go to like domestic violence counseling or whatnot.
Okay.
And I just feel like I'm like, oh, if I'd actually filed something accurately, and I didn't want to press charges. That's another thing that police don't like. I was like, oh, I'm just filing the police report just because my friend is making me, and they're like, well, do you want to press charges? And I was like, no, I don't want to, which is another big thing that'll make the police be like, oh, well, if she's not gonna press charges, that means she won't testify, so might as well just throw it out.
So what do you think is flawed about that system? Somebody who was raped, I mean, because obviously you're trying to deal with the emotions of it all, the trauma. Do you think that there should be maybe like some sort of counselor there to help talk you through it and
100%.
make you help you make better decisions as far as like answering these questions that the police are asking you?
That is actually something that I am looking into doing myself. Is I think there should be a person who has more than likely experienced trauma themselves to help these people, the women, better understand, where I could come in there, or the other counselor can come in there and be like, all right, I know everything. Everything you've gone through is traumatic. One of the things that's very common when people have been through something that you've been through is that you're going to feel guilty for certain things, so you're not going to want to be fully honest, and you're going to want to, and lie is I keep on using the word lie, but it's not even lying, it's just
leaving out the full truth.
Yeah. And you're gonna women need to know, like, you're gonna feel this way, but in like a year or two from now, when you've worked through it, you're gonna regret it, and you just need to. I feel like these women, before they give a statement, before they're allowed to give a statement, before anything like that, they should talk to a counselor, because it's obvious they probably haven't gone to any therapy or counseling yet, and it's a very traumatic thing to try to work through, and then you give a statement, like, it doesn't make sense.
It's kind of putting you back in the same spot.
Yeah. And people know that too, that it's like they're reliving their trauma as they're telling you this, and there needs to be a counselor there beforehand to help you understand, so that way there can be a more accurate police report, and women better understand exactly what it is that they're doing when they're filing that police report. And helping women, there should be like someone there, probably the same person, that is like, all right, you know, you're not going to want to press charges, because typically women don't, but kind of help them work through that. And like, obviously if some women still don't want to, but I still think it needs to be talked about with, obviously I'm not a counselor or therapist yet, but
yet
I mean, right, that's eventual. But it's definitely something that's flawed in the system, for sure.
How do you think something like that can be implemented? And you said you were working on something, so
yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm working on it, because I have so many other things going on in my life.
Not at all.
But it is something that crossed my mind for the first time, I think probably like about 3 months ago. And I was like, you know, if I would have had someone there that told me the way that I was going to be feeling, and I would have heard that, I would have been honest and been like, yeah, no, I only had half a drink, and I didn't smoke any of the marijuana. It was just there. And the cops would have been able to put together that, like, she was very obviously drugged. But because I didn't understand what was happening to me, I was like, I'm feeling this certain way, and I know I can't drive, but I don't know why, so I'm just going to lie to make it make sense. And I feel like, and so that when I was realizing, I was like, if I would have had someone there when I was filing my police report, helping me understand things, I don't know 100% if it would have changed, but in my head, I'm like, I didn't know what I was going through.
Right.
So I don't necessarily know the way that could be implemented yet. I know that when women go to the hospital, and before they do the SANE kit, there is a person on call for that. I think it's called the SANE nurse.
Okay.
And so they're called up to sit with you, but they don't really talk you through anything. So I almost think it could be the same kind of idea as what they do at the hospital before you get the SANE kit done, is that if there's a woman who comes in to file a sexual assault charge, that in the same manner that the SANE nurse is called, a like counselor, trauma informed counselor, can show up and talk with them first. It's kind of what was going through I don't really know how to implement it yet. It's just kind of like a fresh thought from a couple months ago.
Yeah, I don't know how you would implement that. You'd kind of have to like propose it to like police departments,
right?
Because they would have to hire somebody, and I'm sure it'd be like a whole budget thing. And
well, I bet you. So from like, problem. I know that. So like, there's Eves. Do you know what Eves? I don't know if there's an S on the end.
I have no idea what Eves or Eve is.
Eves, it's a counseling service for like trauma survivors or domestic abuse survivors and stuff like that. And so that was a counselor that I went to at one point. And there's people that volunteer to like help be a counselor through like trials and stuff. So I almost bet you like those same people that are counselors for survivors for going through the therapy and counseling before going to trial or working through domestic stuff, that those same people could probably be the people that respond to the police department.
Right.
But I don't really know. So maybe it's Eves that I go through first to try to implement that. But I definitely think something needs to be done because especially with teaching women's self-defense and jujitsu, and any other woman who sits in my chair and anybody who's gotten their hair done knows they open up to their hairstylist more than they do their counselor.
I know you had told me through Messenger that by having people come in and get their hair done, there has been a lot of women who've opened up and shared their stories. And surprisingly, there's been a lot of people, right?
Yes, yep.
Do you try to get them to come to jiu-jitsu? How does all that tie together?
Yeah, so that was actually the first reason that I was like, oh, like I need to do jiu-jitsu because even just at Douglas J, the Veda Institute, when I was there going through school, there was women who sat in my chair at school and like they talked to you about the craziest things, and then like I'm like, oh, they're like a survivor of this, and like I know this and I have so much I want to offer them. So even from the very beginning, women open up about stuff. And so from there, now I'm able to actually offer. And like sometimes right there, even in the salon area, it's also one-on-one. So I only have one chair in my studio.
Okay.
And sometimes right there, I'll be like, all right, so go ahead and stand up. Let's just do some stand-up techniques. Like how are you going to get out? One of the main ones that's really empowering for women is, it's called the inverted wrist releases, where it's usually a form of control that men will do. Is like when a girl, like say a guy's coming at you and you put your arms like this, they'll grab you. And so I'll be like, I teach them how to get out of that. I teach them how to get out of like a drag wrist release. I teach them how to just even get up properly from a fight is extremely also important. So just sometimes right when they get out of my chair, I'll kind of show them a little bit of the techniques and help them get like a taste for it. And then you either take them right upstairs depending on my schedule or schedule them for their first jiu-jitsu class.
Wow. Now, have you found that this helps a lot of women? I know you said it helped you tremendously, being able to take your aggression and anger, all that out on the mat. Has anybody that you've taught that came to you to get their hair done, have they had any significant benefits from this?
Yep. I have, especially one in particular, who actually opened up to me very, very, very quickly. And it was very close to the same situation as me, where it like started as a kid and just kind of perpetuating itself. And there's been many, many women who have benefited from jiu-jitsu and being able to have someone to talk to that like understands.
Now kind of going forward, where do you see yourself in the next few years with jiu-jitsu and your salon? Do you see yourself growing this?
Oh, yeah.
Do you teach anybody else but women?
Yes, I teach men and women. So there's nights where we do just women's class, just women's self-defense class.
Okay.
But then there's other evenings and mornings where we teach the Gracie's combative system. Okay. So I teach men and women. Typically, a lot of my clientele is like couples. So that's a really fun thing for people to do. Sometimes when women are trying to get into jiu-jitsu, it's more difficult because if you're going to a place, like, there's a couple places around Lansing, and it's very dude oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, of course, dudes love jujitsu and dudes love wrestling, right? But it's hard to get, even a dude who wants to do jujitsu, it's hard for him to get his girl to come in. Whereas at my place, it's like I get the girl in the door, and then their partner is like, oh, like, I want to do that too.
Yeah, I don't want my girl to kick my ass.
Right, exactly.
I gotta go too.
Exactly. So I'd say it's mainly women. I also am working on putting together, it's called the Bully Proof program for kids.
Okay.
Teaching kids how to control a bullying situation without becoming a bully, which I think is extremely important to teach children.
Extremely important,
Yes.
especially these days where kids are being bullied and they can't really defend themselves because they'll get kicked out of school.
Exactly.
For it.
So, like, at my kids' school, they know that my kids do jujitsu, and so they know that they can control situations without hurting. And so my 7-year-old, she was in after school care with my 6-year-old, and he's a boy, he's 6, just being a little turd. And the teacher who was there in charge of them was like, Michael, I think he was like running away, and she was like, Kelly, go use jujitsu and control your brother. And like, she knew that he wouldn't get hurt. So
Right, that's funny.
that's one of the most awesome things I love about like Bully Proof for children, is that like they can control situations without hurting their friend or other bully or someone like that, and also just know that they're just doing a good thing.
Kids learning some sort of martial arts is good because it teaches them confidence as well. They don't feel like they're not superior to other people,
Right.
So.
And jiu-jitsu is literally was derived and like made for people to go against people who are bigger and stronger.
Mhm.
So that's another thing, because usually bullies or attackers are usually going for a smaller, weaker person.
Right.
So normally when you're learning, that's why I love jiu-jitsu, is because you're able to defend yourself against a stronger, bigger person. So that's especially for the bullies. They're usually bigger.
How many instructors do you have? Is it just you?
It's just me right
Just
now.
you?
My instructor from my original instructor, he lives in Kalamazoo, so he has come in a couple times. I'm also friends with a black belt over. He also teaches at Magic in Frandor.
Oh, okay.
So he's come over a couple times and taught classes, but it is mainly me right now.
Okay. And how many people do you average in a class?
So depending on the class, so like the women's self-defense class, we've had all the way up to 15.
Wow.
And then in the combatives, I think our biggest for the combatives class has been like 12.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty decent sized class.
Yeah, yep, and we're getting there. And then the Bully Proof program, I already have 5 families signed up for. All have 3 or more kids.
Wow.
So I also just got asked to come teach at it's a homeschool co-op actually in Owasso, where they have anywhere from 85 to 100 kids.
Wow.
And they want me to come in every Friday from 10 to 2 and teach, like, I'll teach one age group from like 10 to 10:30 and another age group all from like 10 to 2. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, you
getting
are
the word
busy.
out there.
You are busy.
Yeah.
Now, I had a question. I don't remember what it was now.
You just asked about class sizes. Was it building on that?
Yeah, I think it was. It just kind of dissipated. It's gone now. Do you have any questions for her or anything? No.
I was wondering about kids, so.
Yeah.
What? Oh yeah, that's what it was. Your age groups. What's the age groups for kids?
So, I mean, the Gracies started kids straight out of the womb, basically. So, but for actual classes in class, I'd usually say about 3.
Oh wow.
But I mean, like my kids, I teach them stuff at home, like starting as early as before they can even stand up, because actually there's this one, like how you're supposed to get up effectively. Kids do it correctly.
Mhm.
They have what's called base before they stand up. They always have 2 points of contact while they're learning to like stand up onto their feet, right?
Right.
So in the Gracie household, they would always, the second that the kid is trying to stand up, if they started getting up where they were having more than 2 points of contact, they'd actually push them down. So you can start teaching your kids jujitsu as soon as you want. But as for coming into the studio, usually around 3 to 96 years old, 100 years old, however old you want to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
My issue is because I want to get my kids into martial arts as well, but the problem is with a lot of gyms around here is that your kids have to be a certain age, like six or 7.
Right.
And so I haven't bothered.
It needs to start before that.
Yeah,
honestly.
absolutely. Especially because kids start early. They start school early. Like my daughter's in school and she, is not able to attend a martial arts program. So.
Yep.
So if somebody wants to come find your gym or get their hair done, where can they find you?
I mean, they can message me on Facebook. Beauty and Beast Salon, I think is what the actual name is underneath it on the how you can like search it on Facebook. I'm not sure. I usually just do text or phone calls, honestly. So I don't know if you want to drop my phone number.
That's up to that's totally up to you. You might end up changing it after this.
Right? But I think Facebook or Instagram is the most effective way to get a hold of me.
Let's just stick with that.
Yeah.
And where is it located if somebody wants to come to a class?
Yeah, it's right across the street from the Lansing Airport. It's a big brick building with a red tin roof.
What's the name of the jiu-jitsu gym?
Beauty and Beast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So downstairs is a salon, upstairs is the gym.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share before we go? I mean, we can sit here as long as you want.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Not that I can really think of.
No.
Right now.
I had mentioned earlier that I've known you for a long time, but where I met Alicia was at when I was homeschooled. I was part of a thing called HSMA, and it was I was in a band. Were you in band or were you in orchestra? You were in orchestra. What did you play?
Violin.
Violin. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's how you met my brother.
Yes.
Also named William.
Right. Apparently, yeah. That name William. At least he's a Goodwill, though. I mean, last I checked.
I think. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, so I've known her for a while, and yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to your one. I think it was probably one of your first podcasts. I was listening to it last week, and I was like,
which one did you listen to?
The one where it's just you talking. The one about
it's my life.
Yeah, that's just personally astounding to me because I'm like, I knew you.
Yeah.
During that time.
And nobody knew. Nobody knows.
I'm like, I was sitting there like, I'm just like, what in the what? Like.
What was crazy about that time too is the time where like I met you. I was homeschooled, and a lot of the things that happened like in the home that I grew up in was happening at that time.
Yeah. And
I just didn't talk about it because like going to HSMA was like kind of a relief from the home.
And I remember because like you were talking. I
was also
about
I was also kind of a wild child.
I mean, I don't necessarily remember that, but I remember like I'd be on the phone with Will, and like I remember like he just have to like randomly hang up. He's like, all right, I gotta go, bye. And like and then there was a couple times where he would like kind of say something that had happened. He was like, oh, there's just like a bunch of drama going on at my house. And like to hear, like to remember that from when Will and I would talk on the phone, and then like hearing what you would say, I'm like, holy crap. Like just like people don't even know what's going on. Like I always thought you guys were like this amazing, like super happy, good family, and I did not. And then like vice versa, like I'm sure that nobody else knew like what was going on with my brother. Or I like it was actually when I was dating. I don't even know if you can call it dating. Well, we saw each other once a week at HSMA. But like that's
sorry, Will.
Right. I mean, he was my first boyfriend. I was like, I always joke about it. I'm like, oh, like we were boyfriend and girlfriend, which at that time meant we see each other once a week and like make eye babies across the room from each other.
Eye babies. Oh my gosh.
But when that was actually the assault while I was with Will was when the assault happened with my neighbor.
Oh.
So it's like, and then he had no clue. And it's just crazy how like they're like people keep stuff to themselves, and you don't you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. It's
and then another issue is like you had mentioned, you know, like you didn't know about the things that were happening like to us, and obviously William didn't know about things that were happening to you. The problem is like the people that you should trust and to trust with these issues, and you should be able to, you know, tell, they don't necessarily handle the situation properly, and they also don't report it to the people that need to know that will make something happen.
Yeah.
You know, like,
which is infuriating to me about like your situation with like did CPS you said CPS did come in like once or twice, right?
CPS came in a lot.
Yeah.
There were so many accusations that CPS would come to investigate, but the thing is because they were a foster family, an open foster home, they would be kind of, well, for one, they would call. They would be like, okay, we're on our way, or we're coming out this day. They would schedule a time. Hey, we're coming out this day to question you about this allegation that was
and then
reported.
they can prep you.
Right.
Then your family's prepping you, be
And
like, oh,
then
you better not.
They'd be like, you need to say this happened, because
Right.
if you don't, then you're going to be taken away, or you're going to be left, and your brother's going to be left here by himself. And like, so it was almost kind of like a guilt trip type thing.
Yeah, that's it's just that whole system is messed up too. And like, I've always heard stories about it, but listening to your story, it's just like, there's just so many things that need to be fixed in this world.
That's one thing by doing this podcast. There's so many things like in all systems that need to be like revamped, and everybody talks about. I mean, you're the first person I've had on that was raped, and obviously there are things that could be changed in that system. For me, you know, it's like the foster care system. There's so many things that could be changed,
right,
that are just messed up. Yeah, there's so many things that need to be fixed.
Yes, there is.
And not enough resources, and not enough people talking about it.
No, there's not enough people talking about anything that's like, well, the people talk about what things that go wrong in the world, but not things that actually matter.
Right, exactly. And fixing, you know, these issues that, you know, like with the foster care system, or with like rape victims, or even like addicts, and the way that, you know, they're treated, and the like them going to rehab and whatnot, like that whole system. Fixing those things would help our community so much, not just our community, but every community.
Yeah.
You know, because if things were implemented in our community, then it would possibly have an effect on surrounding communities, and just make a better world for everybody.
No, yeah, 100%. There's I can agree with that.
So I guess wrapping this up, because I think we're like an hour in. We're almost an hour in. Would there be any advice you would want to offer to other women who have gone through the same thing, or maybe even not, maybe they weren't raped, or maybe they were in a situation that was very uncomfortable? Is there any advice you would want to give to them?
I mean, there's only so much you can say to someone through like this type of what's the word I'm looking for? Like, saying it through like a video isn't as effective as like actually sitting there talking one-on-one. But I think the main thing I can say, oh man, that's a really good question.
Well, I think you sharing your story and victims sharing their story is very empowering, because then it allows, like, if you heard somebody's story about them being raped, and you see how they've taken their life from that point on and turned it into something positive. Like, you were at the point where you wanted to commit suicide. That's probably one of the lowest points in your life you could possibly be.
Yeah.
But then you completely took that and you flipped it around. You started a business. You finished cosmetology school. You teach jujitsu. I mean, and you're still killing it. Like, you're going to be teaching kids, and you know, you're doing great things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that the main thing is like realizing that, well, I guess, like, for women, like, every single woman in the world, I think, should be doing jiu-jitsu. And I think that one thing that women need to know about it is it's not necessarily like you're trying to kill someone all the time. The thing that I love about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu especially is it's extremely scalable. So you learn how to set verbal boundaries, and then, because, you know, like, if you're at like a family reunion and like your uncle is just being inappropriate towards you, you don't necessarily want to gouge his eyes out or rip his arm off, right? Not necessarily.
Right.
So we teach like basic techniques, from just asserting verbal boundaries to non harmful techniques, controlling a situation, and then all the way to deadly force for like worst case scenarios. So I guess the main thing I want women to know is, like, get into jiu-jitsu, know that it's so much more than just rolling around on a mat, learning how to choke people and rip their arms off. It's like, it's
that's the therapeutic
right,
side of it.
That's the more therapeutic side of it. But if you know the techniques that it takes to just be at like a gas station and someone's walking up to you and you're able to say, "Stop, you're making me uncomfortable," you like just that scenario alone, you now know if they keep walking towards you, you know what you're getting into.
Well, it kind of puts you in control of the situation
Right.
as well.
And if they are a good person and they didn't have bad intentions, then they're going to be like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And you immediately know. And just being able to get yourself to the point where you feel comfortable enough to be able to say that to someone is, I think, actually one of my most favorite parts of jiu-jitsu. I mean, choking people is pretty fun, too. But, but yeah, say that's the main thing is just know it's not all like, it's, there's much more to it.
Okay. So is that it? Is that?
I think so.
All right. Well, I guess we'll kind of end it there. This was a really good podcast. I enjoyed sitting here and talking with you.
Yeah, you as well.
It's been nice catching up, and I mean, you've had some terrible things happen since the last time I've seen you.
But, like a decade.
But it's transformed your life, and I think made you a better person in the end.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Same to you.
Thanks. And to the guys that did this stuff to you, fuck them. They're pieces of shit. All right, it's been nice.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Yep.